I'm about to tell something that could save a life, and it has to do with a so-called plaque reversal secret that seniors are being sold every single day. I'm Dr. Claire Whitmore. After 2 decades as a cardiologist, I've looked at thousands of angiograms, Connecticut scans, and stress tests of senior arteries. I've watched plaque grow slowly and silently for years. I've also watched some of that plaque stabilize and even shrink when the right steps were taken. At the same time, I've seen older adults lulled into a false sense of security by promises like, take this supplement, follow this simple trick, and plaque just melts away. Some of those seniors skipped the one thing that actually changes the story. They paid with heart attacks and strokes that did not have to be as bad or happen at all. By the end of this talk, seniors will know 3 things clearly. First, whether plaque in senior arteries can truly be reversed, and what reversal really means in a living human body, not in a marketing video. Second, the real evidence-based secret behind healing and stabilizing plaque. It is not one pill, not one food, not one cleanse. Third, a step-by-step protocol to start changing plaque today, even in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But that secret is not coming in the first minute. If it is handed out too quickly, some seniors will write down 2 words, feel satisfied, and click away. That kind of shortcut thinking is exactly how strokes keep happening, because the label on the secret is not what saves lives, the why behind it does. As seniors listen, it may help to quietly recall some own numbers. What was the last LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol, ever seen on a lab report? Has any doctor ever mentioned plaque, calcium, narrowing, a stent, or a bypass? That background will make what follows much more personal and real. Let me introduce a man whose story haunts me in the best way because it shows so clearly where things go wrong and exactly where they can go right. George was 78 years old, a retired accountant, widowed for 5 years, living alone in the same small house he had owned for decades. He still drove to the grocery store, balanced his own checkbook, and prided himself on never really being sick. He walked more slowly than in his 50s, but he was independent. On paper, George looked like so many seniors. His blood pressure averaged around 142/82 on a low-dose ACE inhibitor. His LDL cholesterol had been in the 130–150 mg/Dl range for years. One of his former doctors had once said, "Not ideal, but acceptable." He had pre-diabetes, fasting sugars around 110–120, a 1C 6.3%. He had smoked in his 20s, quit in his 40s, and told himself that was ancient history. Medications were modest. Lisinopril, a 20 mg statin, a baby aspirin, and a pill for heartburn. In April one year, George began noticing a tightness in his chest when he walked up the little hill to his mailbox. It felt like a band running across the upper chest. It always went away when he stopped and rested. At first he ignored it. Just age, he thought. But at a routine visit, he mentioned, almost casually, "Sometimes my chest feels tight when I go up that hill." His primary doctor frowned and ordered a stress test. On the treadmill, changes appeared on the ECG that suggested reduced blood flow to part of his heart. He was sent to a cardiologist, who recommended an angiogram, a dye study to look directly at the coronary arteries. In May, the angiogram showed about a 75% narrowing in his right coronary artery, plus smaller plaques in other vessels. The interventional cardiologist placed a stent in that tighter spot. Blood flow improved. Afterward, the doctor said, "We opened the blockage that was causing symptoms. Blood is flowing nicely now." What the doctor meant was, the worst narrowing has been widened. What George heard was, "My arteries are cleaned out." 2 very different ideas. After the procedure, George went home on a similar statin dose, his same blood pressure pill plus an extra blood thinner to keep the stent from clotting. At his follow-up, his LDL was 104 mg/dl. Blood pressure was 136/80. The cardiologist said, "We can do better. I'd like LDL under 70 for protection, but I'm glad you're symptom-free. Keep taking your medications and please try to walk most days." George asked, "So that blockage is gone now?" The doctor replied, "The segment we stented is wide open. You still have plaque elsewhere, but the critical spot has been fixed." Again, the message was, the worst area is treated, disease remains. What landed in George's mind was, the problem is taken care of. A few weeks later, a neighbor lent him a DVD from an online heart health program called something like Artery Plaque Reversal Secrets. The host stood in front of animation of arteries and said, "Surgery and stents only treat the symptom. This simple protocol actually dissolves plaque." There were promises about special oils, vitamins, gentle chelation drinks to pull calcium from arteries, and miracle before and after diagrams. Doctors will tell seniors plaque cannot be reversed. That is a lie, the host said. Our secret melts plaque off artery walls in 30 days without drugs. George weighed that against the more cautious, technical language he had heard from his cardiologist and decided the DVD sounded more hopeful. He ordered the supplement package, high-dose fish oil, vitamin K2, a natural chelator, and an herbal artery cleanse. Quietly, he cut his statin pill in half for a while, then stopped it entirely. The DVD had said statins just calcify plaque and make arteries brittle. He never mentioned this to his doctors. He told himself, "I'm on a natural program that reverses plaque. My heart is being cleaned out now." For the first 6 months, he felt pretty good. His original chest tightness on the mailbox hill was gone, but he was also only months out from the stent. Real blood flow had been restored in that segment. He chalked up all improvement to the program. When neighbors asked, he said proudly, "I'm reversing plaque naturally now." By autumn, subtle warning signs began to appear. Walking from his car into the grocery store, he felt a bit more winded. Sometimes, after carrying heavy grocery bags, a dull pressure would spread across his chest, not the old tight band, but a deep, heavy ache. It went away when he sat down. He told himself, "The program says plaque softens and moves before it clears. Maybe that's what this is." At a November follow-up, his LDL was 126 mg DL, higher than before the stent. Blood pressure was 146/86. The cardiologist said, "George, I don't like these numbers. With plaque and a stent, LDL really needs to be under 70. Are all medications being taken as prescribed?" George hesitated, then half admitted, "I've been taking some natural things. I heard statins harden plaque. The video I watched said plaque is reversible without drugs." The cardiologist replied, "Plaque can be stabilized and can even regress some with very low LDL and intensive lifestyle changes, but not with magic powders. Stents don't cure the disease, they fix a specific spot. We need to treat the whole artery tree. I strongly recommend going back to a full-dose statin. We may even add another drug." George nodded politely. In his heart, he did not intend to change. His chest heaviness was mild. He wanted to believe he had found a better path. Over the winter, his symptoms crept closer and louder. He started feeling pressure with brisk walking, not just hills. Occasionally, it came when he was only mildly anxious. One morning, shoveling a light dusting of snow from his short walkway, he had to stop and lean on the shovel, breathing heavily. The band of chest pressure made him feel uneasy, but he reassured himself, maybe the plaque is breaking up. The program said things can feel worse before they get better. It was not plaque breaking up, it was plaque becoming unstable. On a cold February morning around 7:30, George woke with a strange weight in his body, not pain but a sense of being drained. As he walked to the kitchen, a tight, crushing sensation suddenly spread across his chest. This time it was different, not a band but a deep, suffocating pressure. It shot into his left arm, up into his jaw. He felt nauseated and clammy. Sweat rolled down his face. He sat at the table hoping it would pass. It did not. It intensified. Breathing felt like lifting heavy weights. He reached with trembling hands for his blood pressure monitor. It read 158/92, heart rate 110. The number did not look terrifying to him. He had heard that the real danger was over 180 or 200. He thought, this must be indigestion, stress. The supplements are supposed to protect me. He stood up to get an antacid. The moment he did, the pain spiked, his vision greyed, his knees buckled, and he slid down the cabinets onto the floor, gasping. His daughter called, as she did many mornings. He did not answer. She called again. No answer. An uneasy chill went through her. She drove over, used her spare key, and found her father on the kitchen floor, pale, drenched in sweat, clutching his chest, barely able to respond. "Dad, can seniors hear me?" she cried. He opened his eyes but could not form words. She called 911. Paramedics arrived within minutes. The EKG they ran in the kitchen showed a large ST elevation myocardial infarction, a big heart attack in the same artery that had been stented 10 months before. In the ambulance, his blood pressure fell to 88/50. His heart went into a chaotic rhythm. They shocked him back and rushed him to the cath lab. Inside the artery, the reality was ugly. The stented segment had significant new narrowing and clot. Just beyond it, fresh, unstable plaque had developed. They opened these spots and placed another stent, but a large portion of heart muscle had already been starved. In the ICU, an echocardiogram showed his ejection fraction, his heart's pumping strength, down to 30%. Before the first stent, it had been near normal. Now large segments of heart wall barely moved. He developed fluid in his lungs, swelling in his ankles, and shortness of breath just walking a few steps. Heart failure medications were started. Discharge came with oxygen, strict activity limits, and a dramatically smaller world. Blood work showed his LDL had sat in the 120s, 130s for months. Inflammatory markers were elevated. The supplement regimen had not changed the fundamental atherosclerosis in his arteries. The disease advanced while he took comfort in the word reversal. A nurse in cardiac rehab reviewed his bag of bottles. "This chelation drink, this plaque dissolver, all of this, did your cardiologist know?" she asked gently. "No," he said quietly. "They said plaque can't be reversed. But the video said it could. I chose to believe that." The saddest part is this: the truth was never plaque can't change. The truth was that plaque does not vanish in 30 days from secret powders. Plaque becomes safer and somewhat smaller when the entire environment inside the artery is changed, for months and years in very specific ways. If George had understood that, his second heart attack might have been much smaller. It might never have happened. So what is plaque really, and what does reversal actually mean? Plaque is not a clump sitting on top of the artery wall that can be scraped off. It is a living process inside the wall. LDL particles and other apoboy-containing cholesterol particles seep through the inner lining, get trapped, oxidize, and trigger inflammation. The body's repair system responds by laying down fibrous tissue and sometimes calcium, trying to wall off the damage. Over time, lumps of this material grow, narrowing the channel and making the cap over them thin or thick, stable or unstable. When cardiologists talk about plaque reversal, they do not mean a 78-year-old artery returns to a teenager's. They mean three things: the total volume of plaque can be reduced a bit, the soft, dangerous core can shrink, and the fibrous cap can thicken, making the plaque far less likely to crack and cause a sudden clot. They also mean that new plaques can be prevented from forming. That is what reversal looks like in actual arteries. Seniors are different from younger adults in this process, for several reasons. Plaques in older adults are often more calcified and complex, a mixture of old, hardened deposits and newer, softer ones. The inner lining, the endothelium, has been battered by years of blood pressure, sugar, and toxins. It releases less nitric oxide, the chemical that helps vessels relax and resist plaque. Many seniors have diabetes, kidney disease, or chronic inflammation, which keeps the artery wall angry, and tolerance for intense medications or programs may be lower due to side effects. Despite that, research has shown that plaques can change even in later life. Trials like Reversal, Asteroid, and Statin used ultrasound catheters inside coronary arteries to measure plaque volume in adults treated with intensive statin therapy. When LDL cholesterol was driven very low, often into the 60s or even 50s, plaque did not merely stop growing. In many patients, it shrank modestly and became more stable. Very intensive lifestyle programs, such as those Dean Ornish studied, very low-fat, mostly plant-based diet, exercise, stress reduction, and no smoking have shown regression of plaque on angiograms over several years. These programs are demanding, but they prove the principle. When the environment inside the artery is changed enough, plaque moves in the right direction. Large observational studies in journals like JAMA and the New England Journal of Medicine show that seniors who achieve very low LDL levels and maintain them, who keep blood pressure controlled, who stop smoking, and who stay active, have far fewer heart attacks and strokes than those who do not, even when the interventions begin in their 60s or 70s. Here is the part almost no plaque reversal secret video ever highlights. For most seniors, the single most powerful factor in plaque healing is sustained, deep lowering of LDL and ApoB over years, paired with control of the other major insults: blood pressure, blood sugar, smoking, inactivity. For a long time, many doctors told seniors, if LDL is under 100, that's fine. We now know that for anyone with known plaque, a heart attack, stent, bypass, stroke, or clear imaging of calcium, that bar is too high. For those seniors, bringing LDL below 70 and often into the 55 range is where plaque starts to behave better. So the real plaque reversal secret is not a secret at all within cardiology. It is a simple sentence: plaque can be made smaller and much safer when the cholesterol load and other stresses on the artery are turned down hard and kept there, often for the rest of life. That is not easy. It is far simpler to buy a bottle that says artery cleanse, but supplements cannot do what this deep reset does. How does a senior actually begin? The first step is knowing whether plaque is truly present. Some seniors already have that answer: a past heart attack, stent, bypass, stroke, a carotid ultrasound showing plaque, or a coronary calcium score that is high. For others, the question is open. In those cases, a conversation with a clinician about whether a coronary calcium scan, carotid ultrasound, or other imaging is appropriate is important. Without that information, seniors and doctors are guessing how aggressive to be. The second step is setting clear targets. For seniors with proven plaque, an LDL under 70 mg/dL is a common goal, and for very high-risk patients such as those with multiple events under 55 mg/dL may be considered. For seniors without known plaque but with high risk, an LDL under 100 and often under 70 is reasonable. For blood pressure, many older adults are safest when home readings sit in the 120s to low 130s systolic, with diastolic in the 70s adjusted for frailty and dizziness. The third step is a medication plan built in partnership with a clinician. Statins remain the backbone of LDL reduction in seniors with plaque. High-intensity options such as atorvastatin or rosuvastatin at appropriate doses can cut LDL by 50% or more. For those who cannot tolerate high doses, combinations help. A moderate-intensity statin plus ezetimibe, for example, often works well. In very high-risk seniors whose LDL remains high despite these, injectable agents like PCSK9 inhibitors or newer drugs can offer further large drops. Seniors may rightly worry about side effects. Muscle aches, rare liver issues, and interactions with other drugs are real concerns. That is why individualization matters. Doses can be adjusted, agents switched, and labs monitored. The key is not to reject the entire class of medications because of fear or one bad experience. The goal is to find a regimen that both protects arteries and respects how the senior feels. The fourth step is daily lifestyle, the part that is hard to prescribe but deeply powerful. Diets rich in vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, and fish, Mediterranean-style patterns help lower LDL, blood pressure, and inflammation. Replacing saturated fats from fatty red meat, butter, and many processed foods with unsaturated fats from olive oil, avocados, nuts, and fish nudges LDL lower. Some seniors benefit from more plant-predominant or fully plant-based diets. These can drop LDL dramatically, but they must be planned to meet protein and vitamin needs in older bodies. Regular movement is equally vital. For many seniors, a simple schedule of walking 20-30 minutes most days, at a pace that slightly shortens breath but still allows speech, does wonders. Those with limitations can break this into smaller chunks, 10 minutes 3 times a day. Structured cardiac rehabilitation programs, when offered after a heart event, strongly reduce recurrent events and should be accepted, not declined. Smoking must be stopped completely. No pill or vitamin can offset the ongoing damage that each cigarette or cigar causes. Even quitting in the 70s yields benefits. Other conditions must be tamed. Diabetes and prediabetes need attention, with a 1C goals tailored to age and frailty, often around 7.5% for many older adults. Sleep apnea should be diagnosed and treated if suspected. Untreated apnea hammers arteries, night after night. Chronic inflammatory diseases should be managed aggressively. The fifth step is monitoring. LDL, HDL, triglycerides, and sometimes ApoB should be checked every few months while changes are underway, then at least annually. Home blood pressure logs are more informative than single clinic readings. In some cases, repeating a calcium score or carotid ultrasound after several years can confirm that progression has slowed or stopped. Seniors often ask, can supplements like niacin, red yeast rice, or over-the-counter cholesterol support replace statins? Most of these have weaker evidence than statins and modern lipid agents. Red yeast rice is essentially an unregulated, variable-dose natural statin. Niacin can lower some lipids, but has not clearly reduced events in modern trials when added to good statin therapy. Supplements may have roles as add-ons, but they should never be the main pillar for a high-risk senior without a very careful, monitored plan. Another worry is, don't statins calcify plaque and make things worse? Statins do change plaque composition. They tend to convert softer, rupture-prone plaques into more fibrous, somewhat more calcified caps. Those caps are harder to crack, which is good. Event rates go down. That calcification is part of healing, not harm. Seniors also ask, is very low LDL bad for the brain? Large trials that drove LDL into the 50s in older adults did not show surges in dementia caused by these medications. On the other hand, small strokes from uncontrolled risk factors are a well-known cause of vascular dementia. Protecting arteries protects brain health. That said, any new memory issues deserve evaluation. No concern should be dismissed out of hand. One more misconception. If a stent or bypass has been done, is the plaque taken care of? Stents and bypasses fix particular segments, not the whole network. Plaque still sits and can grow in many other areas unless the environment changes. Procedures are important when needed, but they are not cures. Now, to see what happens when this real plaque healing strategy is followed, think about Susan. Susan was 69, a retired school principal. Her father had died of a heart attack at 63, and her brother had needed bypass surgery at 61. She had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and carried extra weight. At 66, concerned about her family history, she asked her doctor whether her own arteries should be looked at more closely. They agreed to do a coronary calcium scan. The result? A calcium score of 320. That number meant she had a significant burden of plaque, even though she had never had chest pain. It was a silent warning. At that time, her LDL was 145 milligrams DL. Blood pressure was usually around 145/85. She did not smoke but exercised only occasionally. Her doctor started a statin and a blood pressure pill and referred her to a cardiologist. The cardiologist said, "This scan tells us plaque is there. It does not mean a heart attack is inevitable. It means we have an opportunity to change the trajectory." They set clear targets: LDL under 70, home blood pressure in the 120s, daily walking, and a Mediterranean-style diet rich in plants and fish. She joined a prevention program, walked 30 minutes most days, cut down red meat, added beans, lentils, oatmeal, nuts, and olive oil. Her statin dose was gradually increased, and ezetimibe was added when LDL plateaued. After a year, her LDL was 62 milligrams lead-AL. Her home blood pressure averaged 126/78. She had lost 12 pounds. She felt more energetic climbing stairs and playing with her grandchildren. 3 years after the first scan, she and her cardiologist decided to repeat the calcium score, understanding that it was just one tool. It had risen only slightly, far less than would be expected in someone her age with untreated risk factors. Stress testing showed good exercise capacity and no new signs of ischemia. Her cardiologist said, "We cannot see each plaque individually without invasive tests, but these results tell us that overall your plaque is more stable and growing much more slowly. What you are doing is working." At 73, Susan remained active, traveling, gardening, walking. Her arteries were not plaque-free, but the plaques were quieter, harder to crack, and far less likely to cause a sudden, devastating event. The difference between George and Susan was not luck. They both had plaque. They both had access to doctors. One chose to chase quick fixes and to misunderstand what reversal meant. The other embraced the harder, truer path of long-term risk factor control. Seniors listening now are much closer to Susan's path than to George's, simply because they know more than George did. It is clear that plaque does not vanish overnight, but it can be made smaller and much less dangerous. It is clear that the most powerful tools are not hidden in dramatic secrets, but in consistent, often unglamorous work. Very low LDL, controlled pressure, controlled sugar, no tobacco, and daily movement. What matters next is action. Seniors can look at their lab reports or ask for them and find the LDL number. They can ask themselves, given my history of plaque or stents or strokes, where should that LDL be? They can bring that question written down if needed to their next appointment and say, "Let's talk seriously about getting my LDL into the true plaque healing range and about what blood pressure and lifestyle goals make sense for my age and strength." They can decide on one small concrete step this week: a 15-minute walk each day, half the usual portion of processed meat, a phone call to a smoking cessation program, or finally agreeing to cardiac rehab. If seniors want to capture this moment in their minds, they can choose one phrase for themselves: starting reversal. If plaque is known and real steps are just beginning. On the path, if LDL and blood pressure are being actively brought down with lifestyle and medication, or talking to doctor. If this has sparked a decision to sit down with a clinician and review all labs, medications and supplements in the light of what truly changes plaque. Those are not magic words. They are signposts, markers that an older adult is shifting from hoping for a secret to acting on the truth. Disclaimer: the content in this script is for educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. Always seek the advice of a physician regarding any medical condition. Never change any medication dosage or stop a prescribed therapy without consulting a doctor.